Our way of using technology today is far more passive and consumption led. If you look at consumption of content, entertainment, of a child in the US and a child in India, it's almost exactly the same, Anirban. But if you look at the amount of time a child in India gets to spend on a computer versus a child in the US, because of the averages, we fall absolutely to the floor. I think in the last year, the AI PC market grew at almost 129% from the year before. We are about 22% share of that market. Creators are a big part of what we focus on. Interestingly, the gaming segment, where we have a very big play, is where we also see a lot of young creators coming out of and a lot of loyalty to our brand. I think right now we are seeing industry disruptions, as you know, with escalating costs and supply constraints around both processors, memory, and other components. India is one of the toughest markets for women to succeed and grow in. My career is littered with as many failures as successes, but I know exactly where I went wrong on my failures.
Ipsita Dasgupta has led at some of the world's most interesting companies: Apple, IBM, Cisco, GE, and Disney. She is now the Managing Director and Senior Vice President at HP, India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. With a Harvard MBA and 25 years of global experience, Ipsita is the force behind HP's AI PC push and its Make in India manufacturing drive. In this conversation, we talk about the big bets, the bold calls, and what it'll take to make more women leaders in tech. Hi, Ipsita. Very warm welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Anirban. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Pleasure's ours. Okay, let's talk about, you've had a really interesting, brilliant career. You've had leadership roles in very interesting companies, from GE to IBM, Cisco, Apple, Star India, Disney. So, is there a sort of a common sort of a lesson or takeaways that you've used or retained throughout in all your companies that you're using now in HP?
I think all these experiences, and you're right, they've been a diverse set. So it looks like I'm a jack of all trades and the master of none, Anirban. The thing that all of these experiences did for me is it just brought me closer and closer to the consumer and to the customer. If you sort of think about all of these companies, sometimes I like to sit and just imagine the number of ways my career has allowed me to touch a household or to touch an individual or to touch a company, an enterprise, a small one, a large one, a government entity. But really, truly, what it truly makes you hone in on is the idea of really creating value and the importance of value and how it all has to be centered around the customer. And I think that's largely what I've brought to HP. HP, didn't come from the industry, and I'm a newcomer into both the industry and the company 2.5 years ago. But it's this set of experiences that allow me to, I think, be one of the more customer-centric, consumer-centric people.
Was it challenging, when you entered HP, because you'd come sort of 2 years after that, the PC shipments had started seeing a decline. But how was the start, and how did you sort of tackle?
So the decline was largely, as you know, because there was a real boom during the pandemic era where people needed, both for online learning and work, there was just a huge growth for the need for PCs and printers in homes. But so there was really more, it was more of a correction that happened afterwards. And I don't feel it was so much, the challenge was in um, identifying ways to think about new users and how to continue to build growth for the industry. And from the perspective of HP, we were always, even through that period and today, the market leader.
So, what about the landscape now? How do you look at it? I mean, you've said that India's PC penetration sits at around 20%, and that the total addressable market could double. You just spoke about new users, and the focus was on penetration and reaching new users. How do you see the market?
Look, I think the fact that we are a market that is between, the numbers are somewhere between 17 and 19% PC penetration means there's a lot of room for movement.
Right.
If you look at the smartphone penetration in India, it is close to, I think, 1.1 billion users, if I'm correct. Our way of using technology today is far more passive and consumption led because handhelds are much more consumption led. To be a very successful, productive economy, we need to move more people towards being able to access and use a PC. And I always tell this story where I say if you walk into a room and you see a child, one on a PC, one on a phone, and one on a tablet, which one do you think is collecting Instagram likes? Which one do you think is watching Netflix? And which one do you think is going to ace their exam the next day?
Right.
And
Oh,
your smile
fantastic.
tells the whole story, right?
Yeah. Thought
So
of my son. So yeah.
exactly. So the truth of the matter is, and if you think about it, when our kids are young, we opt out of handhelds. So why should we disperse handhelds to all the young that are in lower socioeconomic stratas as well? If you look at consumption of content, entertainment of a child in the US and a child in India, it's almost exactly the same, Anirban. But if you look at the amount of time a child in India gets to spend on a computer versus a child in the US, because of the averages, we fall absolutely to the floor. And so clearly there is a lot of room for movement. And I see this in three areas. One is the idea of putting a PC into every child's hands. The second one is we have more than 70 million SMEs across India. Yep. A very small number of them are digitized. We do know that digitized SMEs deliver almost twice the profitable growth of a non-digitized SME. So the opportunity there is also significant. The third opportunity is really with the enterprise and with government. And if you think about the fact that as we take more and more of computing to the edge and we use more and more AI, the opportunities that come with a powerful PC in reducing cost, in reducing latency, in creating a secure environment, all has many pluses. So all of these things are market creating opportunities. And those are the kind of things we're pursuing. And we're driving a lot of initiatives to drive them.
Let me take a few of those strands. One huge push for the smartphone is affordability, which is, which the PC hasn't been able. It's still a challenge. So do you see that as a challenge, a roadblock, which companies like HP have to tackle?
I do, but I've thought about it a little bit differently. If you look at the Indian household, let's talk about consumers for a minute.
Sure.
About a third of my business is consumers, two-thirds
Right.
of my business is commercial. But let's talk about consumers for a minute. If you look at the consumer, they in India, it's not that they're price sensitive, they're value sensitive. They have always chosen things that create value for them. In fact, if you see people upgrade their phones and the kind of smartphones that people want to buy,
Yeah.
even without, I have heard quoted smartphones being bought at 95% of the average annual salary of an individual in India, right? If we showcase, and I have felt very strongly that if we showcase the value, three things: education for young children, skilling for adults and young adults, and income generation.
Right.
If you create enough opportunities, and I can talk you through some of these examples, but we're driving a lot of initiatives to put the use case in front of a consumer. So I agree with you that PCs are still not at the affordability that a phone is at. But if you look across our range, we go across the gamut. I like to say that we actually follow the lifetime of an individual from when you are a college student, when there's only so much you can afford, to when you grow to a point where you have access to much more in your technology that you use. So the need for people to have access to ways in which to use the PC to make their lives better, or like I like to say, influence work, life, and play. is quite significant. Let me just take a step back and tell you a little bit about what I mean when I say a PC in the hand of every child. In homes like yours and mine, most of us, at least I, only have one PC at home that my twin girls share. Actually, that wouldn't be the case in the West. Each child would have their own PC. More and more, we have to start thinking about the PC as a companion. In homes, if you think across places like Dharavi, where we know that in a typical household there are 4 mobile phones, why would there not be a PC? It's not an we have many affordability schemes, and in fact 50% of my PCs today in the consumer business are bought on the back of affordability. 10% of my PCs bought today are bought by new to credit customers. So I am starting to see that shift because of use cases. So that socioeconomic strata where we think of the middle class, the idea of the value a PC can provide, and you talked about my previous experiences. One of the things I've learned through being in consumer businesses is the Indian household needs 2 reasons to buy one thing, usually. Education for a child, along with skilling or income generation for an adult, is a great combination. And just think about our values as Indians, wherever we live. The 2 things we are known for most is the way we prioritize education and how hard we work. Can you think of something more valuable to be able to produce or sell or drive a business for than a PC or a printer? So the second group, as I said, is getting the PC into the home and introducing these types of use cases. And we have started bundling software, working with independent software vendors that are income generation software, that are skilling software, that also help adults. The last socioeconomic strata we're thinking about is, okay, one where it is not feasible to have a PC in the house. We are already working with the government of Maharashtra, with the Honorable Chief Minister, who himself okayed the project, where we have built AI labs in 4, we are building AI labs in 4 schools across Maharashtra that allow children. The goal is to make sure that every child is getting at least 5 hours a week
Right.
on a computer. And if you think about it from an overall vision and goal perspective, as we build more and more small and medium language models, especially around education, just picture a child. This is not what we can do today, but just picture a child being able to come into an AI lab, sit across from the computer, and ask a question. How old is your child, Anirban? 9. So my children are 11. One of the things you realize very quickly is teachers are exhausted. They have a number of kids. Even in our children's schools, they don't like being asked a question twice or 3 times because they don't have the time or the bandwidth. Imagine a child being able to ask the computer these questions, and the computer being able to help them by answering in different ways until the way the child learns clicks. So these are the ways that we can really make a difference from a use case perspective. So these are the kind of initiatives we're driving, and there are 3 or 4 more.
Right.
But these are the types of initiatives.
Got it. Okay, have to come to AI-powered PCs. Very, very, very rookie question. Why would I choose an AI-powered PC when I can get all the apps, all the browser, all the access that I want? I mean, why would someone choose that?
See, in my view, the first set of needs, and we're already seeing this, will be with the enterprise, both the micro enterprise, small enterprise, because at some point your AI processing needs will be high enough that you need more power.
Got it. And
If you
enterprise is 2/3 right now for you? 1/3,
Yes,
2/3?
yeah,
Okay.
commercial is 2/3. So that is the starting point, because there very easily you see the cost benefits, right? It's easier to see cost benefits in an enterprise than it is to see for an individual. So in that context, you are going to, if you can have all your AI processing on the edge, which means on the device itself, you save cost, you save time, because you are not dealing with the cloud computing needs that you have, the sending it back, sending data out and bringing it back, and you have security. So the value of the AI PC, as we use more and more power and as we recognize the value that it can create for us, is tremendous. The same is true with the individual, but you will find that certain categories of people will need it faster or want it faster. A computer science student or an engineer, a creator versus somebody who's using a PC just for basic Excel needs. You'll start to see them requiring the value that the power of an AI PC can give you. I have both. I have an AI PC and I have a PC that is older that does not have AI capabilities. So I'll tell you very interestingly, it took me a while. The AI PC sat there while I continued to use the PC I had for a couple of months. Now I find that when I have to get into deeper, more processing requiring work, I actually have to move to the AI PC because of the speed that it can give me, the efficiency it can give me.
Wouldn't enterprise-facing versions like Claude, Cowork, etc., be competition for an AI PC?
It complements it. It complements it because you need the hardware to have the ability to drive the processing.
So, Ipsita, taking you back to 2024, in an interview, you had said in 2 to 3 years, 50% of all PCs will be AI powered. How do you see the landscape now? And of course, what kind of role is HP playing in that adoption curve?
So, Anirban, it's a great question. So, let me approach this three different ways. First of all, as I was saying earlier, the entire architecture of computing is changing. And it's moving more and more to localized computing from these very large models and cloud computing. At the AI summit earlier this year in February, you saw the Prime Minister and multiple leaders talking about the fact that India will need a hybrid model.
Right.
They will need localized AI capabilities because we can't rely completely on these very large data centers and very centralized large processing capabilities because of the sheer expense of doing that. Within that hybrid model, the AI PC is very valuable because you can do so much on the device itself and not and stay localized. There are 3 or 4 ways to think about it. First, eventually everything will become an AI PC because the computing power on the PC will grow to become greater and greater. Just like if you think about uh, uh, mobile telephony, the ability on the phone has increased over time. So, depending on how fast you think it's going to happen, and most people keep devices for between 3 to 5 years, it makes sense to start to shift towards the AI PC. Because if you believe that this switch is going to turn in the next 18 months or 2 years, you don't want to be looking for your next piece of technology in that shorter period of time, at least for PCs, right? So I think that's the second piece of the equation. The third one is that, we are seeing so much when I look at our role at least, we talked a little bit on the consumer side, but let's focus a little bit on the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise.
Yeah, sure, please.
30% of India's GDP, more than 70 million. Uh, my worry is not that the individual will be left behind because even through mobile telephony, there are many ways people are already using AI. But how does the smaller enterprise make the investments required to be able to experiment with AI? We've built a number of different ways to think about this and drive this. One, we've launched a partnership with CII. It's a Center for AI that is CIIHP, the CIIHP Center for AI. We've already trained more than 7,000 MSMEs across 21 cities on daily hacks for using AI for different types of professionals in your organization, whether it be HR, whether it be accounting or in finance, whether it be marketing, whether it be sales. And there is not a single one of these workshops that we've run. They're usually 3/4 of a day workshops that hasn't gone completely full. In fact, I've had people that I know in large enterprise who have said, I've also sent some of my employees because I can see the impact. We've built another property in India. I don't know if you know this, but on our consumer side, we have 749 HP Worlds. There's our stores, our branded stores. HP doesn't have this anywhere else in the world. This is something that we have in India. Over the last couple of years, we've built another platform, but for MSMEs called HP Connect. we've built 10 already. We are building the next 10 in this year, and they are in places like Raipur, Guwahati, Surat, Pune, Coimbatore. And the idea is we have landed these HP Connects. Think of them as smaller customer demo centers in partnership with software vendors to deliver unique solutions that are within specific verticals among SMEs. And we have landed them within clusters that MSMEs work and live in. So if you are a small company, and interestingly, recently, if I remember the number correctly, in just a space of 11 months, I've had more than 6,000 SMEs come into one of my HP Connects. Of them, 42% have been SMEs that have 100 people or less in them. So just imagine the need. And increasingly, what we're realizing is they don't just need the technology. We have become their CIOs and IT divisions. So we are naturally starting to teach the MSME sector how to utilize AI.
So, Ipsita, that's the awareness curve. But if we talk about the adoption curve, can we get a sense of where HP stands right now, where the AI PC market is concerned?
Look, I think in the last year, the AI PC market grew at almost 129% from the year before. We are about 22% of that, have 22% share of that market. So we are a significant player in that market and in that adoption.
Got it. Okay, one question I'd like to slip in, just a few questions left on my list. You mentioned creators, and that's beginning to be like a really interesting consumer segment right now. There's not just volumes, but also a lot of money that's chasing creators. And the most interesting thing, of course, is that creators are not limited to a certain strata of society or geography. They're coming in from everywhere. PCs are a huge part of their workflow. Is HP cognizant of that fact, and how interesting do you find it?
I completely agree with you. And when I said that every household needs two reasons to buy a PC, one is education for their child, but you can tell, you also have a young child. The results from that, the fruits from that, are much later. The other reason is income generation, or the ability to do something that an adult wants to do in the household. In this, we have most in mind the creator. And a lot of times, or sometimes companies are just thinking about the creators that are the top of the creator funnel. People like you guys who are sitting and creating content in media, etc. Those are all very important creators. But then you have a huge number of creators beyond them as well. For them, we believe the PC becomes an ally and it helps a creator. We are bundling software to help a creator do better creatives. We have the lowest female workforce participation in the world, except for maybe one or two countries, Anirban. Imagine the empowerment for a woman in a home who actually has access to a PC that allows her to do things that she wouldn't have ever dreamt of being able to do without being extremely technology savvy. So creators are a big part of what we focus on. Interestingly, the gaming segment, where we have a very big play, is where we also see a lot of young creators coming out of and a lot of loyalty to our brand.
Okay. Let's get into the manufacturing side of it, what the government is doing, where does India stand in your global supply chain. We had a very interesting conversation with the FM, Nirmala Sitharaman, just the other day at ET Awards, where she
I was
said,
there,
yeah,
yes.
where she said, of course you were there, that more and more manufacturing, why are we importing? Every import is a chance lost, is an opportunity lost. Now, PLI schemes have been really good for the manufacturing sector. In fact, HP has used it. It's now manufacturing laptops and desktops with Dixon, um, and that's supposed to double the previous year's production. Uh, how do you see the overall landscape in terms of manufacturing and what the government is doing policy wise? And how is India becoming more and more important as a node in your global manufacturing supply chain strategy?
Look, we've been very proud of being a part of this, India becoming a larger part of the global supply chain and having manufacturing be localized in India. And as you said, we have a partnership with Dixon, and we are very happy to say that we have met the requirements in our first year of manufacturing under the PLI scheme. I think right now we are seeing industry disruptions, as you know, with escalating costs and supply constraints around both processors, memory, and other components, which Indian component manufacturers are also feeling. So I think we are going to have to sort of see how this plays out and let this smooth out. But I have no doubt in my mind that we are going to develop from a country perspective into one of the most sophisticated manufacturing ecosystems for hardware over IT hardware over the longer term. Right now, there is a bit of a pause in how quickly things are moving because of the supply chain constraints.
Okay. Now, about the supply chain constraints, let me ask you a really broad question. I mean, so much is happening. The war, and then trade relations also. I mean, people talk about China plus one, but this year China just became our biggest trading partner, toppling the US, obviously because of tariffs and all that. Does it make executives like you go back to the drawing board again and again to sort of figure out, what's really happening, and plus the cost issues that you're talking about?
Look, we as a company have focused for a long time, well before some of the circumstances you're describing now, on both resilience and creating the adaptability and flexibility that will be necessary for a world that, as you're saying, is unpredictable. I think that resilience is very important for everyone to build.
Okay, final question. You are, among other things, an exemplary woman leader and a woman leader in tech. We've had really interesting conversations with, for example, Sindhu Gangadharan, who had such interesting insights to share about what should happen. I mean, how can women be, how can there be more leadership roles for women in tech? What would be your advice to someone who's trying to rise in this sector?
Um, it's a great question, and I speak very often to groups of women, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes in bigger groups. Uh, First, I'm going to say the most cliched thing, which is there was never a better time. There was never a better time for women to take the mantle, get more opportunities. However, we have to be quite realistic and clear-eyed about India. I have worked across markets. I've worked across the world. I have been quoted as having said this. India is one of the toughest markets for women to succeed and grow in, largely because the Indian woman has a larger number of stakeholders with an opinion on what she should do than any other country in the world. We have in-laws, we have parents, we have aunts, we have uncles, we have neighbors. And when we run out of all those people, we have everybody else out on the street who has a perspective and an opinion. I think it's really important to do 3 or 4 things. One is, I think having clarity of thought on what you want to do and who you are is really important, because life is going to be a series of trade-offs, especially if you want it all, if you want to have children, if you want to have a personal life, if you want to be part of your community, but you also want to be in the boardrooms and in the labs and where policymakers are sitting. So I encourage people to build a plan. And when I say build a plan, I don't mean stick to a plan. But when you build a plan, what's the first thing you do? You start to ask yourself questions about what your likes and dislikes are. Do I want to ever live abroad? Do I not? Do I want children? Do I not? Do I want a partner who's going to make sacrifices for my career, or do I not? Do I need other people in my ecosystem who will support me? So I think that's knowing yourself, building a plan, and understanding, what your likes and dislikes are. Third, I think women don't take enough bets, and they don't take enough big bets. And I think risk is a major part of what drives success. And the reality is that risk does not mean my career is littered with as many failures as successes. And to be very frank, I don't know how many of the successes are because of luck or because somebody else just decided to accept something that I was doing, close a deal with me, help me get a role, etc. But I know exactly where I went wrong on my failures. So I don't regret my bets because they have taught me a lot about what to think about and what to do next. And so I think I often see the difference that drives me crazy is an equally talented man and woman. The difference I see is in India, especially, the man takes more risk. And I would just encourage women to take more risk. And the last thing I would say is women need communities to be able to do what they do, and they have to have communities that are invested in them. I did a TED talk a few years ago where I talk about women needing co-conspirators, and the idea is that if you're going to challenge the status quo, you need other people who will break the rules to help you. I use examples of mothers. I use one example as mothers-in-law. And use another example with my mother when she was very young, and how street shop owners used to keep the lights on the sidewalk because this young, very attractive woman who had to start working because her father passed away from a Bengali Brahmin household that you can imagine, who had not a young woman of early 20s. She would finish law school. She would come back home and she would be walking, and the path would be very dark. One shopkeeper saw this and started to keep his lights on and wait for her. And once she had gone home, he would leave the store. Others started to do that because they felt that he was keeping his store open to get more customers later in the evening. And suddenly she had co conspirators in her life. So women need a community. So I often see women who do start to do really well sometimes alienate the communities around them. And I think, unfortunately or fortunately, we have to do both. We have to have that other mother who has a little more time, maybe, who you can call and say, can you please grab my kids, or can you please check what's going on at home? And at the same time, you need to be able to have people at work who care enough about you to step in for you when it's needed. So I often say build a tribe, because women need a tribe more than men do. And so I think those are, I would give the advice to men as much as to women. But specific to this question, I think these are all a big part of what one should focus on or think about.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was really fun.